lives in my neighborhood. When he walks by, it looks so good. Wanna get to know him, oh yeah. Wish that I could show him, oh yeah. I wanna love him so bad. No, it's driving me mad. And when I look in his eyes, I can see it, paradise. But I can't help it, I wanna love.
Mice, rats, and roaches have lived with man since the beginning of civilization. Although these animals have colonies independently of man, there is nowhere man lives without some uninvited parasites.
I could make him happy, oh yeah, if he'd only let me, oh yeah. I wanna love him so bad. No, it's driving me mad. And when I look in his eyes, I can see it, paradise. Boy, I can't help it, I wanna love him so bad. I could make him happy, oh yeah.
We'll come back to roaches in a minute with some more rare footage of violence and roach sex. But first, here are some facts about domestic rodents. Originally from southern Asia, mice accompanied migratory man all over the world, knowing that as long as his habitat overlapped man's, there would be always food enough for him. The house mouse is no more of a foreigner to the United States than the descendants of the first settlers. The mouse's ancestors came across with the earliest explorers, and while man was still a squatter on the edge of a bewildering forest, the youngest of these animals could already count several generations of grandparents of American birth. Mice reach a length of 6 inches, including their tails. They weigh up to an ounce. Rats can grow up to 18 inches and weigh many pounds. Unlike their non-urban counterparts, rats and mice don't hibernate in winter and, like man, have no particular mating season. Litters of mice arrive every 6 to 12 weeks, sometimes bringing up to 12 newborn. Rats have litters of about 6 every 30 days. Once in the vicinity of man, mice and rats have few needs. Grain and vegetables usually make up the diet, but rodents prefer to eat what people eat. The typical city block offers each urban rodent 5 ounces of food per day. Because a hardy rat needs only 3 ounces daily, he can afford to choose the foods he prefers, such as nutritional garbage and sweets. Rats like to gain weight, but stay away from spicy foods. They can make their own vitamin C. Adaptability has enabled mice and rats to safely make the most of what the environment has to offer them. The average rat lives better than the average person in New York City. Scientists say rats are the only species other than man to possess a culture which has been described as the passing of information through generations without direct experience. Natural avoidance of predators makes ecological rodent control difficult, the function of predators being to strengthen species by exterminating only the weak. Rats have a natural fear of overpopulation, and therefore territories are defended fiercely. Strict territorial adherence makes disease and poison spread less quickly, and devastations usually only wipe out individual colonies. This self-regulated survival mechanism has given birth to the myth of the super rat. Rats have traditionally suffered from bad press, but people should realize that however many people have died from rat-transmitted diseases such as the plague, as many have been saved by medical research pioneered on rats, often very inhumanely. Rats' usefulness to man is being proven also in the training of an explosive detection team, because rats have the potential to outsniff and outperform bloodhounds. Because they are so adaptable, mice and rats do not need elaborate nests and can make a home anywhere there are soft materials. They can be used in this way to eat evidence, as demonstrated in this newspaper article, in which Henry Bonner has been declared owner of a $4 million real estate claim on Long Island because a mouse ate the records of its earliest owners. While rats have a strong negative impact on the city, the country rat is much more of a problem for man, as rats can spoil entire crops and transmit diseases through pets and livestock. The country rat makes tunnels under grain fields, which he can make watertight with his body in the event of floods. Hoarding of grain in burrows is so successful in southern India that it is dug out at harvest time and eaten by men employed to catch rats. The rats themselves, being healthier than most people, are then eaten by the men. we're taking our crew to the Museum of Natural History to get some inside information about roaches in the city. At this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Betty Faber, who's been researching the behavior of roaches for about 4 years and been watching roaches seriously for about 12. She's very unusual in that most people that are looking at roaches are thinking about them in terms of how can they be exterminated. Dr. Faber, where are we?
We're outside the greenhouse. It's a part of the Animal Behavior Department. It's on top of the American Museum of Natural History. This is a rather important greenhouse to me because this is where I keep my wild roaches that I study. Actually, keep is not a very proper descriptive term because these roaches were here a long time before I was. This particular greenhouse doesn't house plants, but houses tropical fish. Tropical fish die quickly if you spray, therefore nobody sprayed for the last 30 or 40 years, and we have a bounty of cockroaches.
Do you think they like it here as opposed to being in someone's kitchen?
Well, in some respects, they probably don't like it as well as a kitchen because it doesn't have as much grease and cooking stuff around, but it does have, they aren't sprayed. They can live here as long as they want to, and they do have plenty of water and occasional dead fish. They don't know any better, so I'm sure they're satisfied.
What do you think it feels like to be a roach?
I don't think it feels like anything at all, because I don't think roaches can feel. I think that roaches are very, they're almost like a reflex. They're like somebody hitting your knee and you kicking your foot up, and I think that's about as much as they feel. Now this cockroach is the American cockroach. It is the cockroach that people in New York commonly call water bugs. And one thing that people frequently ask you is, are these cockroaches able to fly? Well, the answer is some of them are and some of them aren't. Exactly how many can and how many can't is a question that I'm interested in looking at them. And when you're interested in looking at this sort of question, what you wind up doing is a lot of roach tossing. So in a minute, I'm going to toss this roach for the camera.
Try it.
And put the roach.
I like doing the focal thing.
Oh, you missed it.
Well, what is the value of roaches
The value?
in terms of, I mean, there must be some reason for them being here.
Well, in a forest, roaches are scavengers. They do things like they eat leaves, they take care of decaying leaves, and they'll eat dead animals, and they're probably sort of nature's garbage men. And in that respect, I'm sure that they're very important. People use them for a lot of things too. They're a very important animal for research in laboratories because they're very cheap, they're easy to maintain. You can do a lot of experiments and spend very little money. They're good for dissections.
But not that many people are doing it, are they?
Well, in some other countries people are. I think here it's partly a custom not to like roaches and not to be too used to them, but I'm sure as money starts drying up, people will begin to realize their value.
Is it true that some people eat roaches?
Well, you do hear all of these rumors, and I have heard a few. One being that in places in the Far East, when people are getting ready to eat roaches, they feed them something that's very, very spicy. And then they serve them on a platter, and the trick is to catch them with your chopsticks.
And eat them live.
And eat them live. And if anybody should hear of any kind of validity to this, I would be delighted to know about it. I also heard of a very odd story about a monk who was a member of the Explorers Club who went to a cave in Puerto Rico and caught all of these Puerto Rican roaches, and he pickled them in rum.
Huh.
And he served them 4 years later at the Explorers Club as appetizers, and they were a tremendous hit.
Really?
Yes.
That's pretty interesting.
Yes.
Well, what would happen in the event of a nuclear war, do you think, to the
Well, if
species of roach?
if the earth was burned to a crisp, the roaches would be burnt to a crisp too. If it was only slightly French fried, there is a chance that we would not survive and the cockroaches would, because they do have this natural armor that does protect them against things like low levels of radiation. And I imagine that some of them would suffer with us not being here because they are used to all the comforts of home. And if there weren't people to do their housekeeping for them, they would sort of be left up the creek.
So it isn't people that just have dirty homes that have roaches?
Frequently not, no. In the southern part of the United States, for example, roaches do live outside. They do come in a lot regardless of your house or how you keep it. They just like the shelter and the warmth and the availability of food. In New York, even some of the poshest apartments are infested with an occasional cockroach, probably because they like the steam heating system.
An occasional cockroach?
Well, sometimes more than an occasional cockroach, but that sounds nicer. Well, you can see that this particular cockroach is enjoying its meal. For one thing, its little antennae are waving back and forth, and that means that it's taking in this food with all of its senses. For antennae in the cockroach are very much like its nose. That's the way it smells. So its mouth is telling it that this stuff tastes really pretty good, and the antennae are telling it that it also likes what it is eating.
What do you think about those roach traps? Did you once say that they were inhumane or
Well, I don't know
unkind?
I don't know that any way of killing roaches is really that unkind, because I don't think that they're very conscious. If you're concerned about being humane or inhumane to your cockroaches, if you stick them on glue and let them just lie there until they die, it certainly doesn't sound wonderful. But I doubt if they're really aware enough to know any of this.
So roaches now live and do most of their business at night.
Yes.
Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
But they didn't used to? Or they always were nocturnal?
Well, I think the kinds that we have that infest houses and apartments were always pretty nocturnal. I mean, there are a lot of animals that do like to eat roaches. And if the roaches come out at night, they're more difficult for these animals to see. A lot of lizards, a lot of birds, spiders, scorpions, many of these find roaches quite tasty.
Do roaches have a real need for privacy? Or are they very...
I don't think so. I mean, if there's a lot of food around, obviously a roach is much happier if it's the only roach around, but I wouldn't call that a need for privacy.
Where are these roaches from? What kind of roaches?
These are African stridulating roaches. They're from, I think, a part of Africa.
Now they're two different kinds, right?
Well, the little ones are the nymphs. The ones with no wings are the nymphs.
Are the nymphs? Explain that.
It's gone. The nymphs are what they call immature cockroaches. They still have a ways to grow yet. You'll notice they're a bit smaller. They can't reproduce sexually, and they have no wings.
Right here. Now you'll get a fright this time. Sure. They're fighting. When I step on a roach, I notice all this white stuff comes squishing out. What is that?
Well, roaches are a lot more complicated on the inside than you'd ever think. And that white stuff is really, it's stuff that's called the fat body. And it's a mixture of fat and, I guess, something like liver. Because it's the place where the roach stores its energy, And it's a place where the roach can do a lot of rather marvelous things as far as its chemistry goes. Like that's the place that the cockroach is capable of keeping DDT from being poisonous.
Really?
It detoxifies DDT right there. Some of this stuff on top are the tubes that the animal uses to breathe, and the opaque stuff on either side is the fat body, which is that guck that comes out of the animal when you step on it. I'm going to spread out the digestive tract so that you can see it a little bit better. This long thing here is the digestive tract. This first segment here is the crop, which the animal uses more or less as an organ of short-term storage. These little sacs here are little sacs that the animal uses to keep various protozoans in, which help it digest certain things that it eats. The midgut all along here is the place where the cockroach absorbs its food. The Malpighian tubules, which are the tiny hair-like tubes here, are really its kidney, and this is the cockroach's rectum. Almost nobody sees all this mess when they step on the animal. On the very bottom of the cockroach is the ventral nerve cord. Now that may be difficult to observe in this animal, but it is this little cord, I'm going to put the forceps under it, that runs right along the bottom of the animal. It has these little enlargements called ganglia, and these little ganglia, which are found all along the bottom of the animal, essentially form the brain of the cockroach. So if you cut off a cockroach's head, you're not really killing that much of it. You have to kill the brain and the rest of the animal too, if you want it to be really dead.
So tell me a little bit about the sex life of a roach.
Well, you might think that roaches are very sexy because there's so many of them, but they really aren't. I mean, roaches, when a female first becomes an adult, she's very attractive to males because she produces this odor that drives them just nuts. And when they smell this, they flap their wings, they back into things, they run all over the place, and eventually they mate with the female. Well, that's one moment of splendor. For 3 or 4 long months of her producing little cockroaches, she only has to mate once, and she's set to produce little roaches for the next maybe 4 to 6 months, which means she may only have to wait once in her adult life to make her completely fertile just about forever.
Well, so does that mean that it's not that much fun?
Well, it may be magnificently fun, but it doesn't happen very often. It has to be a real quality moment to last for those several months.
It must be pretty good. It is difficult to envision an inhospitable environment for mice, rats, and roaches that we could live in. Obviously, we can take steps to discourage the animals, steps which are also beneficial to us and our neighborhood. Littering, careless garbage disposal, and messy homes all encourage mice, rats, and roaches to share our habitat. But with between 1 and 8 rats per person in New York City and an innumerable number of roaches, it's time to realize that these are non-game wildlife that are as integral to our environment as dogs and cats. While these animals may not be welcome, we've always had them, and we always will.
Birds do it, bees do it, even educated fleas do it. Let's do it, let's fall in love. Canaries caged in the house do it. When they're out of season, grouse do it. Let's do it, let's fall in love. The most sedate barnyard fowls do it. When a chanticleer cries, high-browed old owls do it. They're supposed to be wise. Penguins in flocks on the rocks do it. Even little cuckoos in their clocks do it. Let's do it, let's fall let's do it. Let's fall in love. Mosquitoes, heaven forbid, do it. So does every katydid, do it. Let's do it. Let's fall in love. The most refined ladybugs do it. When a gentleman calls, moths in your rug, do it. What's the use of mothballs? Locusts in trees, do it. Bees, do it. Even highly educated fleas, do it. Let's do it. Let's fall in love. Sloths who hang down from twigs, do it, though the effort is great. Sweet guinea pigs, do it, buy a couple and wait. The world admits bears in pits, do it. Even Pekingeses in the